authorized.
Good evening, everybody. The Select Board is called to order September 5th, 2024 at 6 o'clock. Let's see here.
First, we gotta
Approve.
get John.
What's that?
John is on remote.
Oh, that's right. John, are you there?
I am here.
Say that one more time.
Yes.
Okay, just checking. I'm getting back.
You're getting feedback because we
Yeah.
have the speakers up so
Oh.
people can hear.
Okay.
So John is attending remote tonight, but he will be participating.
So, item 2, approve the September 5th, 2024 joint Select Board meeting and the September 12th, 2024 meeting minutes.
So moved.
I have a first.
Second.
Second. All in favor? John?
Aye.
Thank you. Public forum, this is an opportunity for anyone who wants to address the Board of Selectmen with any issue that is not on the agenda. Anybody have anything to ask? How about on the Zoom?
No hands raised.
No hands raised, okay. Item 4, public hearing to adopt the MMA Model Ordinance GA Appendices A-G for the period October 1, 2024 to September 30th, 2025. Each year, the state of Maine amends the model ordinance with the maximum allowances for rent, food, and fuel. And there's Allison.
Hi, everyone. Good evening. So for those of you who don't know me, I'm Allison Kenway, the Director of Kennebunkport Public Health, and one of my jobs is also to administer the state-mandated general assistance program for the town. And each year, the state analyzes each town in every county and determines the maximum amount of assistance that a person in need can qualify for. General assistance program is administered by the municipality to aid people or a family who are unable to provide their basic needs, essential to maintain themselves for a limited period. So the basic needs is like heat, housing, fuel, food. And our job is to assist those clients to help meet their needs and help them navigate other options of help. So as mandated by the state, Kennebunkport votes every year to accept these maximums that are set by the state. So changes this year, you guys all have the appendices, and okay.
Yep.
A, B, C, G, and H all had those overall maximums that are housing, food, funerals, mileage, they've all increased over last year. And D through F, heating, personal care, and household supplies, those all remained the same as last year. They also had initiated a recovery residence housing last year that has increased as well this year. And just a little update on some of the things that we see through our office. In 2023, we had only one request for general assistance last year. And we do continue to have a lot of people in town that need assistance but don't qualify for the state-mandated general assistance through the state. Through our outreach services, we can meet many of their needs. Kennebunkport has a general needs account that we have here in town to help residents, and each case is reviewed individually to see how we can help them. We also have a fuel account and a food account that we can also utilize to help those residents in need. Community outreach services in Kennebunk and community harvest in Kennebunk are also service the 3-town community, and they take all requests through the general assistance offices. So we kind of vet them and then we refer them to those if we need to for assistance. Those are also based case-by-case basis. Community outreach services also runs the food pantry, and we do have quite a few residents that go over there for their food, to use the food pantry. Another program that started in 2021, and I think I forgot to mention it last year, but Healthy Harvest through Community Harvest is a program that was started to help residents get a farm share through Finkel Pod Farm to get healthy choices. So we have 6 families that are participating in that program this year. Kennebunk Rotary also has CS3, which stands for 3 Communities Strong, and they provide back-to-school clothing and shoes to school children in need in our district. The kids are referred through the general assistance offices as well, And we had 3 students this year that participated in this. Last year, we had 7, so we had a little less this year. We also have Secret Santa program, and last year we had 5 families consisting of 8 children that received Secret Santa gifts through that program. And we have our own fuel assistance and assist town residents with fuel. And that would be oil, K1, propane, electricity, cordwood or pellets. And we had 16 residents last year totaling $6,108.78 through that program. We also help our residents get connected with York County Community Action through their electric assistance programs and their fuel assistance for low-income people. There's a lot of paperwork, and we also can help them with all that stuff, so it's been great. Any questions?
Your department is very busy. This
We
is
have
a
a wide
public
range.
forum. Is there anybody out in the public that would have any questions at all? How about any hands raised?
No hands raised.
No hands raised and no questions. Well, thank you
All
very
right.
much. I'll close the public hearing.
Okay.
Thank you. So we need a vote to adopt.
Close.
Somebody want to make a
Oh,
motion?
I'll make a motion to adopt the new model ordinance.
Second.
Have a first and second. All in favor? John?
Aye.
That's 4. Thank you, Allison. Okay, 5. Consider a renewal liquor license for the Breakwater Inn and Spa located at 127 Ocean Avenue. Staff recommends the approval. Could I have a
Yep, I'd like to make a motion to approve the license as stated.
have a first?
Second.
Have a first and a second. All in favor? John?
Aye.
4. Okay. Item 6, we're going to wait to the next meeting. Item 7, update from Woodard and Kern regarding the Pier Road head of the harbor project. Hi.
How are you?
Excuse me. Good evening. My name is Caitlin Sewer. I'm a civil engineer and project manager with Woodard and Curran, and I'm here tonight with my colleagues Kevin Trainer and Barry Sheff, here to give an update on the Pier Road Head of the Harbor Resilience Project. Next slide, please. So tonight's presentation will provide an update on the project status, including the work that Woodard and Curran has done to date. We'll share feedback from the neighborhood site walk that we hosted with the town several weeks ago. And then at the end of the presentation, we'll walk through some concepts that we've been considering, and then have time for discussion and questions. And I wanted to just point out on this slide that we've included a photograph of the January 13th, 2024 storm event. We understand that this was maybe not representative of the peak flooding elevation, but gives you a sense of the flooding that occurred on the road during that January 2024 storm event. Next slide, please. In January of this year, the town submitted a grant application to the Maine DOT Maine Infrastructure Adaptation Fund for the town to evaluate resilience and improvements on Pier Road at the head of Cape Porpoise Harbor. The town was awarded a $50,000 grant towards the project, and in June of this year, the town authorized Woodard and Curran to work on the preliminary design for the project. As I'm sure you are all aware, this section of Pier Road is subject to flooding and experiences flooding several times per year. And during these flooding events, the road becomes impassable to passenger vehicles and to emergency and town vehicles. So the goal of this project is to elevate Pier Road to improve resilience to flooding, to maintain access for passenger, town, and emergency vehicles, and to reduce risks to utility infrastructure. And as a point of reference, which is noted on this slide, and I'll discuss in greater detail later, the state of Maine has recommended a commitment to manage 1.5 feet of sea level rise by the year 2050. So I'll talk a little bit more about that in the following slides. So where are we today? So earlier this year, field work was completed to support the preliminary design. And then about a month ago, so on August 29th, Woodard and Curran and the town hosted a neighborhood meeting where we invited members of the community to come and share their feedback, what their experiences have been with flooding in this area, and I'll talk about that a little bit more on the following slide. And since that meeting, Woodard and Curran has been working on conceptual design, which is what we're here to present to you tonight. We look forward to hearing your feedback at the end of this presentation, and then after today, we'll work on advancing alternatives through preliminary design, with the ultimate deliverable being a preliminary design report that has drawings, cost estimates, and we anticipate being back in front of the board again to share an update once we've been through the preliminary design and have a recommended alternative. If you remember, for the Ocean Avenue project that Woodard and Curran worked on, presented that to you several months ago. I was on maternity leave at the time, but Barry presented that to you. So this will be a similar process to that, where we're not at that stage for this project yet. We're still in conceptual design right now, but we'll be at that stage when we come back in front of you again. Next slide, please. So as I mentioned a few weeks ago, Woodard and Curran and the town hosted a neighborhood site walk where we invited residents to come and share their hopes and goals and aspirations for this project, and to share their feedback with us, what they've been experiencing with flooding during storm events. And I see that some of you folks are here tonight, so I'm glad to see that. We were very grateful and thankful to have feedback from the community to help us understand what they've been experiencing. And some of the feedback that we heard was that during large storm events, that the road can sometimes be impassable for several hours, that lawns and driveways and crawl spaces and first floors are impacted, and that there were numerous occasions this past winter where folks were unable to leave their home due to the flooding on Pier Road. So we also heard that people saw propane tanks floating down the road and cars. At the end of the meeting, we asked everyone, who is in favor of doing nothing, and no one raised their hand. So the consensus that we heard from the community was that really something needs to be done on Pier Road to address the resilience, and really no one was in favor of doing nothing. Next slide, please. So on this slide, I'm going to walk through some of the critical elevations that we're considering as we're working through the conceptual design. So starting at the bottom of this figure on the right, the highest annual tide in this area is 11.75. And I want to actually mention that all the elevations that I'm talking about tonight are relative to tide. So that MLLW acronym that you're seeing, that's mean lower low water elevation. So that's relative to tide. That's a different datum than we typically work in engineering. But the feedback that we heard from the community during the neighborhood site walk was that it's more helpful to speak relative to tide. It's easier for people to understand what we're talking about. So all the elevations that I'm talking about tonight are relative to tide. So just above the highest annual tide is elevation 11.8, and that's the existing roadway low point. It's at a catch basin near 24 and 26 Pier Road, and you can see on the aerial image on this slide, we've noted the location of where that catch basin is. So then moving up, the next elevation is elevation 14. That's the FEMA 100-year still water elevation. So that's the elevation of the floodwater during the 100-year event without accounting for wave runup. The next elevation, which we've highlighted here, is 14.57. That was the elevation that was on the Portland tide gauge during the January 13th, 2024 storm event. And you may wonder why we're referencing Portland. That's because that's the nearest tide gauge to Kennebunkport. So we've highlighted that just because, it's a helpful reference point for people, I think, because we all experienced what that storm event was. The next elevation here is elevation 15. That's the 100-year still water elevation plus 1 foot of sea level rise. And then elevation 17 is the FEMA base flood elevation. So that's the elevation of water during the 100-year storm event, which is the 1% chance storm that would happen in any given year. And then above that, the top elevation that we have here is elevation 18.5, and that's the FEMA base flood elevation plus 1.5 feet of sea level rise. As I mentioned on an earlier slide, the state of Maine has recommended a commitment to manage 1.5 feet of sea level rise by the year 2050. So that's what that elevation represents. What's not shown on this slide, but that I want to mention, is that there are king tides that happen once or twice a year, and we understand that during those high tide events that this area floods, and we've heard from the residents that this road floods at least several times per year. And next slide, please. So when we're thinking about resilience strategies, there's sort of three main categories you can think about. Strategy 1 is to protect, so to stop the water. Strategy 2 is to retreat, so to get away from the water, or you could say to do nothing. And then strategy 3 is to elevate or to get above the water. Next slide, please. So the first strategy, to protect or to stop the water, this strategy might include solutions like constructing a breakwater or a flood wall further out in the harbor. And you can see a couple examples of what this might look like in the images on this slide. The top image is from the breakwater in Rockland. And this type of solution reduces wave effects, but it doesn't stop the water elevation. You can kind of see in the picture on the left of that breakwater, the water, it's hard to see on this here, but is more calm than on the open ocean side. And then the bottom picture is an example of a flood barrier. This is the New Bedford flood barrier in Massachusetts. So this is a combination of a breakwater and a tide gate, where this would, under normal conditions, it would act as a breakwater, and then during, before a storm event, that gate would be closed, and so that would control the water elevation. So, while both of these are viable solutions for some applications, they're not the right solution for this project for a number of reasons. This type of project is significantly expensive. It would have significant resource impacts, and such as like disrupting ecosystems, and it would limit access to the harbor. The permitting is not guaranteed, so it would be difficult to permit, and in fact, as part of the permitting, you would have to do an alternatives analysis. So for all of those reasons, and from what we understand from the community, not wanting to change the access to the harbor, we're not pursuing this type of strategy for this project. Next slide, please. So strategy 2, to retreat or to get away from the water. We understand that this is not a solution that anybody wants. As we heard loud and clear at the neighborhood meeting, something needs to be done. Pier Road is the only road providing access to roughly 90 parcels, which you can see on this map here. It also connects to the newly constructed Pier Road Causeway to Bickford Island, and the anticipated reconstruction of the Cape Porpoise Pier. So, as we understand it, and the town and the community doesn't want to do nothing. So this is not a great strategy. Next slide, please. So that brings us to strategy 3, which is to elevate. So that would mean raising the elevation of Pier Road. This is the most feasible solution to provide greater resilience to the critical infrastructure in this area. And this is the strategy that's been our focus over the last several weeks of looking at different concepts to raise the road elevation. And I've included the image on the right here to show you, and some of these elevations will be familiar from the previous, or the earlier slide where I talked through the elevations. This is a picture from the neighborhood walk where we flagged utility poles to help people understand the elevations that we're talking about. The bottom ribbon on that pole in green is elevation 15. The pink one in the middle is elevation 17, so that's the base flood elevation, and then the orange one on top is elevation 18 and a half. So that's, again, the base flood elevation plus a foot and a half. So for each concept that we've looked at, we've evaluated the level of impact to the neighboring properties and have categorized them as minor, moderate, and significant. And I want to preface these concepts by saying that those terms are totally subjective. That's kind of our best attempt at sort of trying to figure out what each of these options, the impacts that each of these options might have on the abutting property owners. So I'm going to walk through a few different concepts and just want folks to keep in mind that we're still at the concept level of design here, and just sharing our progress with you and hoping to get some feedback on what we've done thus far. Next slide, please. So the first concept that we looked at would be raising the roadway elevation to 14. This would coincide with the Stillwater elevation of 14, and would mean raising the low point of the roadway roughly 2 feet. For reference, this would be 1 foot below that green ribbon on that utility pole in the picture there, and this would be below the January 2024 storm event. So for each option, as I said, we've looked at the impact that raising the roadway would have on the abutting properties, and what I mean by that is when you raise the road elevation, you have to tie back into the existing grades. And so the further you raise the road, the more difficult that becomes. And it's maybe difficult to see, but on the image or on the plan on this slide, there's a red dashed line, and that shows the approximate extent of grading that would need to happen to raise the road to that elevation. So you can see there's 6 properties that we've identified as having minor impacts, and then 1 as having a moderate impact. And the difference between those is just that the moderate impact would mean a larger portion of that person's lawn would need to be regraded. So and again, these are sort of subjective, and it's just our best attempt at representing what each concept, the impacts that it would have.
So, I'm sorry, but
Yep.
minor and moderate still mean that it's doable?
Yeah, so what it would mean is that the town would need to get a grading easement from that property to be able to do the work. And it could potentially mean, regrading a portion of that person's lawn so that it would have a little bit of a steeper slope for some section, or not at this elevation, but the elevations that I'll show in a minute might require a retaining wall be installed along the road to limit the extensive grading on the neighboring property. So doable, yes.
So doable, and also meaning that we're not imposing any other issues on the residents.
It would require a grading easement from them, so, but that would be the impact.
But no other adverse impacts from the raising,
Right,
other
just,
than grading the properties.
yeah, and, we walked this site, some people have beautiful, gardens and trees and, those types of things like in that frontage area that would,
that
be
zone.
impacted. Yeah,
in
so
the zone.
we haven't gone to that level of detail for this exercise right now, but that would be as part of our next step for whichever elevations we choose to continue to evaluate through preliminary design. We would get a better sense of what those types of impacts are going to be.
All right, thank you.
Will you be addressing the steepness of the driveways?
Yes.
All right, so that's another thing I'm concerned about. Okay, thanks.
So is the steepness of the driveways in this minor and moderate?
Yes.
Rating?
So
Okay.
this elevation, it's not a lot higher than the existing road today. So the impacts would be arguably fairly minimal. When we get to, so I'm going to talk about elevation 14, 15, 17, and 18 and a half. Those are the 4 concepts that we looked at. When you get up to 18 and a half, you're starting to look at steeper driveways than we would recommend. But we're kind of jumping ahead. But we'll get there. I think unless people have other questions on this slide, we can flip to the next one. So elevation 15 would provide resilience for the 100-year still water elevation plus 1 foot of sea level rise. This option is still 2 feet below that base flood elevation of 17. And as you can see on the plan here where we've highlighted the various properties that would be impacted, there are greater properties impacted than the previous version. And it's hard to see kind of at this scale, but we've shown on the plan some blue where we think there might need to be retaining walls to help minimize the extent of grading on the properties. So like, for example, in front of 25, 27, 29, and 31 Pier Road.
So
Yeah, thank
can
you.
these retaining walls be added to at a later date, say 20 years from now? Say we didn't go the whole thing, but things were getting worse with the tide rise and the whole 9 yards. Can they be added to take care of that?
Yes. Yes, I think anything, could be done. One consideration is that these walls would likely have to have retaining walls on the, guardrails on top of them. So you might have to take off that first block and then, put another layer of, if you're using like a modular block retaining wall, for example. So there might be some deconstruction and reconstruction that is needed to happen. And then, you still have to raise the road too, right? So we can think about like an incremental approach, but I don't know if that's necessarily something that we would recommend.
Well,
We're going to let her go through the presentation.
but you're
Okay.
talking the retaining wall really would be on the properties, on the owner's side, to have less impact on the grading that they have to have and support the road, right? So
Yes.
the retaining wall kind of has to be there
Yes.
At that elevation.
at that elevation, just to
Right.
protect.
Once
those-
you go to this elevation, that retaining wall would have to be there.
So you couldn't really do it incrementally, you'd have to probably do it when.
I'm just concerned a lot about if you went to like 18 and a half right away. I think that would be damaging to the property values and everything else. But that's just my opinion. And that's why I asked you if we could raise these at a later date if we had to. Because that's an unknown. You don't know whether you're going to have to raise them or not.
Yeah, so let's let Caitlin
Let's
finish
finish.
the presentation.
These are all good questions. So I think we can probably flip to the next elevation. So elevation 17, again, this is the FEMA base flood elevation. So this would provide resilience for the 100-year storm event. At this elevation, more properties are impacted. So, essentially, the higher that we go with the road, the more resilience that we're getting, but the more impact we're going to have on the abutting properties. And that's just a matter of the grading that needs to happen to accommodate the increase in elevation.
And so the red, Caitlin, is the
The red is the approximate extent of grading that would happen. And you'll see in the blue, we've shown retaining walls. And the reason to use the retaining wall is to not have to go at a steep, at a slope down from the road. So, if someone has a nice level lawn that, if you put a retaining wall, that helps preserve some of, that level area versus without a retaining wall, you might have to grade that area and it could be at a slope, like that in somebody's front yard. So again, we haven't worked through the details of like how tall all of these would be, but, our sense is that to go to this elevation, there would be a good amount of retaining walls that would need to support the road at that elevation.
And the breaks in the retaining wall are the driveways that are
Yes,
going down.
yes, thank you, yep. Yes, so there would be breaks in the retaining walls where people have driveways so that they can continue to access their driveway. All right, next slide, please. So elevation 18.5, this is the most resilient option, which would provide resilience for the FEMA base flood elevation of 17 plus 1.5 feet of sea level rise. This option would achieve the state's commitment to manage 1.5 feet of sea level rise by the year 2050. You can see for this option, we now have a few properties where they might have more significant impacts. And the reason that we're saying that is because the driveways to those properties now become greater than what we would typically recommend for a driveway slope. So those several properties there, those driveways would become steeper than, if we were designing a new driveway, for example, we would.
What is the maximum that you would feel that would be the correct slope?
Typically between 10 and 15%. What we're showing here, the limits of grading that we're showing on these figures is a 20%.
Okay. On the significant, 20%, you say?
Yes,
Okay.
yeah. And for reference, when you think about, my colleague said this to me the other day, and it was helpful for me that, sometimes thinking about percentages, it's hard to visualize, but if you think about a boat ramp, the part above the water is say 10 to 15%, but then when you go below the water, it increases to 20%. So just to give you kind of a frame of reference for what those percentages look like. So one of the other things that we've been considering is realigning the roadway, so shifting the right-of-way slightly and that may help alleviate some of the impacts to properties. So if we were to shift the alignment kind of away a little bit from those orange properties, that might help alleviate some of the impacts to those properties. So far, all of the concepts that we've shown tonight keep the roadway within the current right-of-way, but we could look at, if you were to shift the right-of-way, which would mean acquiring property, does that help alleviate some of those impacts? So again, this is, the most resilient option, but does have the most impact to abutters.
Can we ask?
Do you have any?
No, we're not done yet.
I have one more.
Next slide, Dave.
A nice summary slide here. So to summarize, so strategy 1 to protect, which would mean breakwater or a flood barrier is not a practical solution for this project. Strategy 2 to retreat or to do nothing. We heard loud and clear from the community that that's not what they're interested in doing. So strategy 3, elevating Pier Road, is the strategy that we're recommending. And the considerations for this strategy are really the increasing level of resilience increases abutter impacts and costs. So, we welcome the board's feedback on the concepts that we've presented here tonight, and happy to answer any questions that you may have. But in summary, we would recommend taking concept for elevation 14 off the table completely. That really doesn't provide an adequate level of resilience. And similarly with elevation 15, that would provide resilience for today, but not in the future. So elevations 17 and 18 and a half would probably be where we would recommend being to really achieve a greater level of resilience. So that kind of concludes the presentation and the concepts that we've looked at. And I just want to reiterate that these are concepts, and we look forward to hearing your feedback and the public's feedback. And after today, the next steps would be to work through the preliminary design of the alternatives that we want to move forward with. And then when we come back to present to you again, we'll have a better sense of, more specific impacts and cost and all of that good stuff.
Do you have any questions?
Yes.
Go for it.
You want me to go first?
Go first.
Okay. So can you help us understand, or me, the how do we look at the water coming back in from the cove area, so from the marsh behind? So you gave us the elevation point of the lowest one on the road. Topographically, is there elevations behind these residents that are a lower point that will hit us from the water coming up from the cove, even if we're doing this at the road?
Yeah, so the base flood elevation for the area behind, for like the Sampson Cove area, is elevation 15. So that is, I don't think we put that on here.
Okay.
But that's the base flood elevation for that area. So, for example, for like the breakwater strategy, the strategy 1, like that would not help with that.
Okay.
So both of these really need to be addressed at the same time, Sampson's Cove and the head of the harbor?
Well, raising.
Because one's going to flood, and the other one, if you don't only do one, it's going to flood on the Sampson's Cove side.
Right, so this project is really about the roadway itself and
Okay.
raising the roadway up to maintain, access for the town and for emergency vehicles and for people. So, raising the road up is gonna, depending on what elevation you go to, is gonna help on with both sides.
So Sampson Cove right now sits at a 15 elevation.
The FEMA base flood elevation for Sampson Cove is 15.
Okay.
Okay.
Yeah, so
All
it's, a little bit lower than the other side, the Pier Road side, the harbor side.
Okay. And then, like, when we're looking at the strategies, which thank you for them, the options, how do we look at when we have the retaining walls? And then, as John pointed out, we'll have the breaks for the driveways. So, for example, when I go to elevation 15, I've got the red, which is the elevation. Then I see some blue, but I only have if I'm looking at it correctly, I only have a few homes that are item 20, homes 25, 27, 29 that have breaks for the driveways.
Yeah, so for that elevation, based on our conceptual design, you would only need retaining walls along that stretch. So the other properties that don't have that, you would just be able to grade from the road down. So the other properties, like for example, 20, 16, 24, we wouldn't need to put a retaining wall along the road there because of what the existing elevations are. So we would just be able to grade that driveway back.
So then when I go to like concept elevation 17, then I'm looking at the houses on the Sampson Cove side, on that side of the bend. And if I'm looking at it correctly, I see that they all have the retaining wall and then breaks for the driveways. So am I thinking about this correctly, that the retaining wall and obviously the breaks for the break for the driveway will be at a lower elevation?
Well, at the road would be at whatever elevation, and then the driveway would grade down like that.
But the break, so what I'm getting at is, so say we pick an elevation, and, 80% of the time, we're securing the road from the sea. And then we get, say we picked a moderate elevation, and then we get a big storm like we had, and it's sitting at a higher. Does this, having retaining walls and then openness for the driveways, does this create a funnel where now we're funneling water into residents' driveways down to the homes, or if the water broke over into the road?
Yeah, it's a good question, and I'm going to have my colleague Kevin talk about that because, oh, you have a microphone, okay.
Good evening. I'm Kevin Trainer. So the question about whether the retaining walls would direct water towards the homes, any of these options that raise the elevation of the road would necessitate some additional drainage to make sure that water that currently can flow one way, and once we put for the road, if the road is raised and can't flow as it does now, needs to be collected in a storm drain system and discharged to a pipe. So that would change the way that water flows, but there would be additional inlets to collect that water and funnel it back to the ocean. If there's an event where the road has been raised, but the tide comes up above that new elevation, then essentially things would be submerged and we're not actually directing water at anything, so that wouldn't be a concern.
Yeah, so that's where I'm sort of getting at, is right now, when the road floods, you know, there are no barriers to the water. The water just spreads, right? So all the homeowners there look out their windows and they see water spreading, and the water is then either receding back or, you know, spreading and, you know, draining. But if we are consciously putting break walls there, and now all of a sudden we have an opening for a driveway that doesn't have a floodgate, now all of a sudden that water's sitting on that road, if we pick an elevation that we have a storm that comes over, and then that water is going to find a new home, which is down that driveway. So that, it seems like we would be imposing, you know, some bad mojo to some of the homeowners there. Is
So-
that, am I looking at it correctly, I guess is my
I think there's one distinction. So the walls are really only there to help with the transition from the higher elevation on the road to the lower elevation on the properties. So the road would be at a consistent elevation. So the breaks in the wall that you see are not an opportunity for water to get through at a lower elevation, essentially.
Okay, so the retaining wall is sitting flush with the road.
Flush with the road,
Got
and
it.
then the reveal, the
Yep.
face that you see is on the property side.
Okay, so then the water can spill over this retaining wall. It's not a
Just like-
literally break. Okay, that's,
Exactly.
I got confused when John had asked a question, and then it seemed like there was a break. So, great, thank you. That's very helpful. And if I'm still allowed to ask questions, am
Sure
I?
you are.
Okay, so then my last question, well, maybe just for right now, is, you know, just, is there a different, you know, I'm looking at trying to gain as much with not impacting the homeowners that much, right? Or is, you know, I'm trying to find that sweet spot. So there is no option to create some kind of connecting road outside of this current path that would actually essentially serve as a break wall. So like, for example, properties can still feed into this road at current elevations, they can access this road, but you actually have a road that sits, you know, some connecting road that sits in here that goes over to some point that is at that higher height that basically protects, if we're saying Sampson Cove is already at an elevation where we're not worried about that right now.
I think that would be a much more expensive project. I don't know if you.
We'll get there, Mike. We'll get
So
there.
that in concept is.
Kevin,
like-
you gotta use the mic.
Got to use the microphone. Thank you, Lori. The, doing that, the land at that elevation just doesn't exist there right now. So in order to tie in, you'd basically be building a bridge across the harbor. And so kind of like where you were pointing to, just inside the curve,
Yeah,
there's nowhere to land it, basically, where the elevation is higher than, where the elevation is high enough that you'd be achieving any sort of resilience. Because as long as you leave any low point in the road, you have the same problem. If you raise 900 feet out of 1,000 and leave 100 feet submerged, you have the same situation, basically.
okay,
You all set?
for right now, but I'm sure there's more. Dave?
David?
I get what you're trying to do, and I guess I'm with everybody else probably concerned about the homeowners. I mean, I've driven down there many times. You know, some won't have as much of an impact, but some that are actually on the water side, the harbor side, you know, you look at some of these, I mean, some of these elevations are taller than my car now, so it's almost like I'd be driving on my roof. Like, I mean, the whole road would be above where the top of my car is now. So, you know, when you look at that, I don't know how some of these folks, there's going to be a huge impact, but they just don't have driveways that could handle that. To your point, and are we creating almost like a swimming pool if water got in there and then can't get out? I'm not saying we're not doing anything. I'm just trying to work it out in my head, like how this would all work so that we are not trapping water on people's property.
Yeah, it's a challenging project. I
Yeah,
think.
I mean, my simple way of looking at this, just at the various options, I mean, I know we're going to be discussing this for a little while, but my simple way of looking at this is sort of, I think I'm following maybe where you were headed, Alan, which is, until we hear from others.
wanna hear from the
there's
neighbors,
other
too.
ideas, and John. But, we may have to walk this in a bit, right? We may have to take one bite out of the apple first, that's not as aggressive as the 2050 plan. Because if we do go to that 2050 plan, as this states and as David has pointed out, the burden's going to be on a lot of homeowners to then have to do something also to their property. So, so I think we still have to hear more from others and stuff. But does John need to say something?
Are you-
No, I mean, I'd like to hear from the neighbors too, what their thoughts are on this.
John, you want to add anything to this?
No, I'd like to hear from the neighbors as well.
I didn't
So
get-
what we're gonna do is, Yanina's gonna go to people so they can speak from there, so you can respond.
Okay.
Well, it's Alan's job to point to people.
Yeah. Mike?
Can we flip back to concept elevation 18 and a half? So, my whole thing is, I know people don't listen to me when I say it, but this is what I'm going to say. We're talking about making a retaining wall all the way around, at 18 and a half feet, all the way around.
Yep.
So that's, I can't remember exactly when I measured it, because I measured it for Christmas lights, and I think it was 450 feet around, something like that, from where the railing is on the sidewalk. So the sidewalk all the way around to the gray house, okay, is about 450 feet or thereabouts. I can't remember exactly. So we're talking about putting a retaining wall there. Why don't we just make it a levee? So then what you got is, we got 3,500 feet of levees on the Mississippi River. We've got levees, the Netherlands live with levees. Why don't we do the water side, make that a levee, make it so it is, you've got some, you could go 17 feet or you could go 15 feet, I don't care what, but you can, if you, in the future, you wanted to raise it to the 18.5, you could raise it, because you're gonna have a surface and a retaining wall that can be raised. So now you've got a retaining wall all along that whole side there. You could even go behind the gray house and go up to the fish houses and so forth, as far as you need to go. You may have to then raise the road a little bit beyond Fisher Lane going out, because you can't get a levee all the way around maybe. But then you can also come around, there's structures there where the condos are. You can come around there as well with a levee. So you don't have to raise the road. And my question on the road was, sometime between 2000 and 2008, we completely dug that road up and redid the sewer and I think the water both. I think it was both of them.
Yeah.
Remember, Alan, it was
Yep.
all dug up for almost
Yep.
2 years. And so what happens when you add another 6.5 feet of road onto the existing road? Do you have to dig the utilities up first? Are they going to be happy about when they got to repair a sewer or a water line, digging down through not just 3 or 4 feet, but 10 feet? I mean, is that what we're going to do? So I just think that if you got a retaining wall, you got to build a retaining wall, make it a levee, make it 3 or 4 feet wide or whatever you got to do, and avoid raising the road. Because the things that people have brought up about water, first of all, I'm going to say we got to do something. So whatever we do, but driveways like this, I can only speak for my own house. I would have water in the crawl space. I mean, it's just the way it would be everywhere. And I don't see how you could fix the drainage. And then somebody brought up the point of Sampson's Cove. You can't do anything about, you can't put anything out there to prevent the flooding, I don't think, of Sampson Cove. So what we're saying here, and what Barry said at the walk-around, is that we're looking for resilience for the infrastructure. So, well, I tell you, Sampson's Cove may be the thing that takes some of the houses out, but it's not going to destroy the infrastructure. Okay, so I see that and I understand it. But I just think if you looked at doing a levee, it may cause some inconvenience on the backside a little bit, but it seems to me it solves the problem. If you're going to make that kind of a retaining wall, you might as well. And if you look at it now, go over there and take a look at what they did between 2000 and 2008, whenever it was. The rocks now are all starting to fall out because we have such water coming in there all the time. So you're going to have to, when you go and do the road, you're going to have to repair all that anyway. So why not just bite the bullet and make a levee? Call it a dike. I was looking on the Netherlands, what they've done, and they've got a little bit of different situation, but they've got a lot of levees and a lot of dikes. And the Mississippi River has a lot of, now they don't all work, but this could work. So that's my speech.
Thanks, Mike.
And that's why I agreed with Mary Beth, because she had the right idea. If you could do something different going across there, you can't make a bridge, I know, but that was the right idea, going through there and doing that. So it's almost like a bridge. It's almost like an extra.
Yeah, it's like an
road.
extra,
Yeah.
extra stopgap.
So anyway, that's
leave
my
the road
pitch.
away.
So why can't we do that?
I'm going to let Kevin, who's our modeling expert, speak to that a little bit.
And don't talk to me about cost, because we don't know what any of this is going to cost yet. Please.
I will not talk about cost.
Thank you.
So stopping, that's basically the stopping the water alternative, right? So some of the reasons that we don't think that that's favorable to elevating the road is really, again, in order to get from whatever, say if you want to build it to elevation 15 or 18, whatever elevation you want to build it to, you have to tie in to that at either end. So you would be essentially starting from the end of the gray shading there and then creating a continuous levee across to the matching elevation on the other side. So where those extents work out, you'd basically be landing on one of those houses. So you'd be tying in.
No, I'm
right
saying
through
go
a
around.
house.
I'm saying go around and out. So, and the same over here on the other side. So you're building a retaining wall that's going to be dead-ended. It's no different from a levee that is dead-ended, right? So what are you telling me?
Well, I guess a couple of the things that would be really challenging about that for this setting is, I mean, number one, I think where you're talking about, it's not shown on this figure, but there's a dredged channel that the Army Corps maintains.
Oh, but that dredge is way out. So that dredge doesn't even come within 200 yards of the head of the harbor or more. I got, Dick, a couple hundred yards maybe? Something like that at least. So you don't have, that's not a problem.
Okay. So even without the dredging area, you're still talking about probably placing thousands, if not tens of thousands of cubic yards of fill in the resource, which is going to require an Army Corps of Engineers permit that will require the kind of alternatives analysis that we're doing here. And if there's a feasible alternative that does not include that sort of resource impact of impacting and acquiring a submerged lands lease from the Department of Marine Resources, they would require that we evaluate an alternative like this. And if the Army Corps decides that this is a more favorable alternative from an ecological standpoint, then that would be the end of it. It wouldn't be permittable.
So you tell me you don't want to try?
No, that's not what I'm saying.
Okay,
Mike,
well, that's what I heard.
Can,
So-
can I just say, are you, just so you're talking a levee dike, whatever we want to, are you talking that it would actually curve, like follow the contour of the road, or is it?
Exactly,
Right, so.
follow the contour.
So follows the contour of
doing
the
it
road
anyway
on
with
the,
the-
on the water side, let's call
Yeah,
it, not the house side.
exactly.
And it follows it, of course, then we got this issue with the houses,
You go behind them,
but
yeah.
A question
mean, it
too,
is-
on the shading of the gray. So if we have the lowest elevation at the 11.8, how do I interpret the shading of the gray road? So, does this, like, is it gray because it's the 18.5?
Essentially, yes. So that's the extent of the road that would need to be rebuilt to get to that elevation on either end.
Okay, but if we didn't go to the 18.5 and say we were at 15, does the gray area shrink?
It does. So if we scroll through the images, you'll see that the gray
Okay, well,
extent
so,
is smaller.
so that's where it fell back, okay. So it went way up, and now we're back to whatever the first, if that's whatever the first, is that Fisher's Lane, the first? word?
Fisher's Lane.
Fisher's Lane? Okay. All right, I see.
Did you want to hear from other,
What?
did you want to hear from other?
Yes.
Yeah.
I do. Is there anybody else
Anyone else?
in the, are you finished?
Well, I'd like to hear from others, but we need to keep, yeah, after we hear from the other residents, we need to.
Is there anybody else in the audience that would like to add to this conversation?
just come up to, oh.
Going back to the red dotted line on elevation 15. So can you tell me, so what is the red dotted line? Is that going to be the new road
No, so,
presence or?
nope, so the road reconstruction would be the gray hatch. And the red dashed line is the extent of grading that would have to happen to bring the road to whatever elevation.
Okay, and the extent of grading, is it earth or is it rocks?
So it's earth. So grading, that would mean like grading somebody's lawn like this to then bring up to the road. And when that starts to become very steep or have big impacts, horizontally, is when you might think about introducing a retaining wall to limit that extent of grading, if that makes sense.
Okay, but you, on this plan, you haven't made recommendations of what that retaining wall would be, or is that the blue?
That's the blue, yeah.
Okay.
So you can sort of see, like where we don't have the blue, the limits of grading is a little bit greater onto the private properties because we don't have that retaining wall.
Got it.
Oh,
We need to make sure people have mics. People gotta have a mic to speak.
I just wanted
like,
to know,
say 2 feet.
following up on her question, what's the width of the retaining wall?
2 feet, say. The
Not much different from a levee, huh?
So I have,
You got to get permits for that too, to do a retaining wall?
Oh, yes.
Yeah,
Yep.
so if you got to get that, you're talking about 2 feet for a retaining wall. You're talking maybe an extra foot for a levee, or maybe, depends on how big you want it. So I can't imagine that we couldn't apply for, you got to apply for 2 feet. I can't imagine why you couldn't apply for a little more. I'm just looking for alternatives to avoid raising the road if we can.
I understand where you're coming from, Mike. I have that same question that you just brought up. I don't understand why we can't have a retaining wall outside where the granite wall is now, and just wrap around from the beginning to the end of where it is now. I just don't quite understand. I just don't understand the difference. I understand the difference, but I don't understand why that wouldn't work.
There is a railing, right? On the outside, on the water side of that curved part in front of your house is the railing. I mean, could a retaining wall or levee, would it go where that is, that would, the water doesn't rise up above the top rails. You know, on that fence that's there. So couldn't we just build a wall, whatever we want to call it, on that side of the road to prevent, so when the water does rise, it just doesn't come in onto the road and onto the properties there? Or, I'm trying,
Yeah.
I'm
well,
just
that-
thinking, 6
that's
feet
the
is a,
levy.
6 feet is a huge impact. I mean, basically, in my opinion, 6 or 7 feet, these people's second floor are gonna be, basically, the second floor is the road, and their first floor is gonna be basically a basement compared to the road. So I just think that we have to do something, but I don't know if we can jump right to,
Yeah.
17 feet.
Yeah, I
I'm
don't
like,
think I'm not, so looking at the options presented, I wouldn't go to the 18 and a half. I wouldn't go to that level. I just think that what you showed us for the impact to the residents, they would be so these are models, this is if the sea level rise in that time zone at that point, and, to me, we would do more of an 80-20 rule or a 60-40 where we would be confident, 60% of the time or 80% of the time we're secure, and the remaining times we will have residents evacuate, if we know a major storm is coming or something happens. If we get to the 18.5, then residents would have to be also doing something at that point in that time, just like any other area of our town where we wouldn't be doing this in a silo. They would be also saying, okay, our houses have to go up, or whatever the answers are. So I feel it's too draconian to go to the 18.5. We would look at something lower, but looking through this, I'm sort of I think I'm with some of the other board members here and some of the residents where could we go out to the Army Corps and engineers and say, okay, here's the options we have. This is a situation, what would a levee look like? And most importantly, can I take my Chevy to the levee when the levee is dry? I couldn't resist.
Don't, just
Boy, you
But-
just
stick to
gave-
the points.
But I think, I guess that's the question is, I don't
I
know
would
if
much
we're ready
rather
to
see a
jump.
retaining wall, one whole wall to take care of it without doing everything else that's involved, like doing things with their driveways and their lawns and everything else. I would rather see the other, like Mike suggested, if it's at all possible. I mean, I don't know, but
Yeah.
it just seems logical to me that would be a better way of taking care of the neighbors and the road.
Like
So I do have a question, if I may, but if we went using the levee and we wanted to protect the road against significant rise, wouldn't we also need a levee on the Sampson Cove side? You're protecting the sea, but the water can still come from the backside. So, and I'm looking ahead at significant rise, 16, 17 feet. I think that the road's going to be compromised then. We're at 15-foot base, you're going to have 2 feet at 17 over the marsh. So that water's going to come 2 feet on the road that you didn't raise. So
But-
that's my concern.
Well, I mean, question, could you put a breakwater, or whatever we're calling, a levee, you know what I'm talking, maybe you could raise the road a little bit, but not almost 7 feet. Maybe you could still raise the road 2 feet. So that at least appears that the breakwater is not as high above the road when you're driving down the road.
But I feel that when we get to the 17 and 18 and a half feet, we're in a different discussion than we are right now. That's a major redesign, homeowners and town for this area.
Oh,
So that's not, when we talked about Wanby Beach and you guys came in front of that, that was sort of, the board went, we voted yes to go to the highest elevation because there really wasn't an impact on residents. If you're going to touch something, go and do it. You came up with a nice thing that still made it residential friendly for people going to visit the beach as much as we possibly could. And we were securing that area, and I feel that was the right thing to do. Here, if we go to the 18.5, I feel that we've gone someplace that
We don't need to go there.
we don't need to go there right now. And the impact, to residences, I think is very big.
Yeah, I completely understand your concerns, and I think that's the challenging thing about this project. That, to provide the level of resilience that the state is recommending, that, from an engineering standpoint, when we're doing the modeling, that it's challenging. I think at some point, the properties in this area are going to have to address the issue on the private properties. And the intent of this project and the grant that the town received was to, make the infrastructure more resilient. And so that's, our focus is really looking at how can you raise the road and protect, the road and the public access and the utilities that are there. So I totally hear what you're saying. I think it's a tough situation.
No, I appreciate all you've done and what you're trying to do and what the purpose of the grant is. Wamby Beach, it doesn't have raising it that much did not have the impact this will have, because it's a whole different environment in terms of there's no neighbors that basically are right on the road. You're not impacting as many homes. These are people's homes. So, I think there's got to be some maybe more thought on how this would work, talking to the neighbors and figuring it out. I just don't know, to everyone else's point, I don't know if you can go 18 feet. And it would protect the road and the town's infrastructure, but it's also going to impact the neighbors too much, I think.
Well, I don't think they're suggesting 18.5. I think they just want some feedback from us.
Yeah.
What we feel what we'd be comfortable with.
No,
I'd be
they're not-
comfortable with 17.
Well, I'm just saying, Alan, 17 is still a 5.5-foot rise of the road. That's almost as tall as me. So it is
It is,
it's
but-
an impact to those people
But
directly.
it's a minor impact and a moderate impact on some. So, Mike, you had one more question, correct? Did you have a question?
I already asked it, I didn't get an answer. I keep forgetting. I didn't get an answer on what happens with 6 feet of more road on the utilities down below.
We would raise them. That's what we did
So-
in the causeway. and so-
Okay, so we would have to we'd have to dig the road up again anyway, is what you're saying, okay.
So I think tonight we've heard feedback from the board and residents, and I would suggest, rather than continuing to run the mill on it, that Eric and I meet with the engineers and bring back some potential solutions for you to look at based on the feedback we got tonight.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, you've done a great
thank
job.
you.
And I
I
don't,
really appreciate what you've done tonight, all of you. It's helped us an awful lot to think about this a little further on. Thank you.
Well, thank you, because that was our hope for being with you all tonight. So appreciate your
So
feedback.
we're moving forward.
Yes,
Yeah.
we are.
We are.
Progress, yes. Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you.
thank you.
Item 8, recommendations from Chris Simeone and Eric LaBelle regarding Stonehaven Hill parking. You guys are up.
So I also asked Dave to put the GIS map up in case there's any point you want to reference any of those areas.
Okay, so I'll start. So Lori had tasked us with going down and take a look at Pier Road to see if there was any temporary parking that we might be able to establish for the upcoming pier reconstruction. I went down with Matt Philbrick, and as you know, basically on the southwesterly side, all the way from Cape Porpoise down to the causeway, we have a sidewalk on that side of the road, which kind of makes it prohibitive to put any type of temporary parking on that side of the road. On the northeasterly side, basically from the entrance of the boat ramp up to Stonehaven, and then Stonehaven down toward Fisher's Lane, was the area that we ended up looking at. Basically from Stonehaven Lane down toward Fisher's Lane, that section of the road didn't lend itself real well to establishing any type of temporary parking. Just off the paved section of the road, we have a lot of fences. There's a few places where either the grade drops down too fast or, the lawns are already raised. So without some significant impacts to the property owners along there, there wasn't a lot that we felt we could do in that section. So we kind of looked back toward the section of Pier Road from Stonehaven back down to the boat ramp. There's already a little bit of a shoulder there on the side of the road. It's not great, but we did look at the possibility of kind of improving the gravel shoulder of the road there to see if we could maybe pick up some parking spaces. What we came up with is, approximately 16 spaces that we may be able to get in from the entrance of the boat ramp back up toward the entrance to Stonehaven Drive. The issue that we have is the road isn't quite wide enough. So we would have to do some work to that, shoulder of the roadway. We do know that there's ledge in places down there that would require probably bringing in a subcontractor with an excavator large enough with a hammer on it to be able to break some of that ledge away so that we could remove it. We would have to go in and probably box cut part of that shoulder and go back in with some suitable gravel to make that happen. The only issue that we found with that is we would really narrow down the travel lanes. There were a few places that when Matt and I measured, the travel lane would only be 9 feet wide. 9 feet sounds like it might be adequate, but if you consider one of the newer, like 3/4 ton, 1 ton pickups, with the mirrors, they're at a width of 9 to 10 feet. So as you can imagine, two vehicles like that, trying to pass each other, that's when mirrors get clipped or people sideswipe vehicles. So, what we were left with is, that is something that could be done, but if it were to be done, we would recommend putting in an alternating one-way traffic pattern, similar to what we did when the causeway was being constructed. Just because I don't feel there's enough room there. The travel lanes are not going to be wide enough for two vehicles to pass. So I think that traffic would have to alternate so that we could keep enough room for people that are parking to open their doors, pedestrians, bicyclists, large delivery trucks going down to the pier. I feel that's probably the only safe way to handle that.
So when would you expect to want to put the light? You wouldn't want to have to do it in the wintertime, I wouldn't think.
I don't think that you would need it in the wintertime just because I don't feel there's going to be a large parking demand down there.
Well, what we were talking about is not having the additional parking during winter, so we could open it up in April, let's say, when the demand gets higher, and then have the traffic light out there for April through July. And so it would be a shorter period of time if you guys wanted to pursue that.
Okay.
To add to that, Matt and I kind of tried to estimate costs as best we could, not knowing how much ledge is down there. But what we arrived at was approximately $10,000 to make those shoulder improvements. I did reach out to, I think it was Central Maine Signal, Eric, I think. But it would be a monthly rental for those traffic lights at about $5,500 a month.
That's quite expensive.
What was the time frame for the work again at the pier?
9 months, wasn't it?
It's going to start in November, and then substantial completion is July, end of July.
November to July. So we're
so that-
thinking April is more of the, so April, May, June,
July.
July would be our,
Well, I was suggesting that that way we didn't have to close it all winter.
yeah.
You know, could we do with the parking we have down there during the winter months? Because the number of fishermen and certainly the restaurants don't have business. And then in April, when things are really opening up, that's when we'd have the additional parking open. I was just looking at ways to limit the impact.
So they're gonna go from the Chowder House with a fence all the way across,
Pretty much, yeah.
pretty much. So it's gonna take roughly half, not quite half the parking out.
I don't know about half, but it is going to impact it. I did talk to the contractor as well about the need to really control contractor and subcontractor parking, because my concern is they'll bring many vehicles, and they're going to try to keep their parking within their fenced area whenever possible.
Okay. Any ideas? What do you think about the idea?
Well, I think we want to address some short-term parking for the area. I mean, I don't know what people would do without giving some relief. It's already slightly crazy down there right
Well, you have
now.
over 55 businesses in Cape Porpoise Pier. Each boat is a business. So if there's 55 families or better that's impacted on this, it's not just a couple.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I think I like the idea of, if April's the right month, I like the idea of an April to a July, relief. I think the one lane served really well during the causeway. When we were doing the causeway work, that seemed, it didn't seem, I don't think we heard a lot from people that was a big issue to get across. I mean, you had to wait sometimes, but I think people are used to those when you're under construction.
Yeah, again, I think, at least when the Causeway project was going on, the only complaint that we had was the length of time between, the alternating traffic. But that, that can be changed, that can be tweaked, you can change the amount of time in between, letting one side go and the other.
Eric, do you have anything to add just in terms of the work that's needed or your thoughts?
Yeah, and I think that's certainly probably the best solution. I mean, we'll shorten that length of time as well, so the timing on that light would not be as great as it was on the causeway, because we replaced the light basically at roughly 76 Pier Road, and we replaced the light at Stonehaven. And so that was a fair amount of distance, so that timing was long. So we shouldn't, in this particular case, we shouldn't be that long in the delay, in the light delay. So,
Well, I think it worked pretty well, actually. I talked to a lot of people down at the pier, and I had very few complaints about the length of the time of the lights. I had a couple people mention it, but overall, it worked out pretty well. The causeway came out great and with not very much impact. I have a gentleman out in the back there that would like to speak. You'll have to come up to the mic. And introduce yourself, please.
I'm John Floyd, General Manager of Ultramar. So my biggest question, and I think you already addressed it, was the length of the light. I know that during the causeway construction, we had a lot of regulars at our restaurant that just stopped coming, simply because the length of the light was quite substantial. But I think that got fixed towards the very end, which was kind of refreshing. My biggest question was, is there going to be some sort of monitoring? Are you going to have cameras on the lights? Because I almost got hit 4 times by lobstermen blowing through the light because the length was so long. It became a little dangerous, especially at night. So is that something that's going to be addressed?
So, Chris, you did say that it was probably going to be a shorter length of time on the light.
Yeah, I think that, because obviously we're spanning a shorter distance there, so we could probably shorten that time window up. In regards to cameras down there, being able to monitor that, can't monitor everything 100% of the time. It's like anything else anywhere in town. Certainly officers can be down there at different times looking for that. but, you know, we wouldn't be able to monitor 100% of the time.
It's
It's just not.
there's like traffic lights, because there are cameras like in cities on traffic lights. I wasn't sure if there was something that you could get, where like if someone's running a red, you could snap it.
Yep. Yep. That's probably not going to be likely here. Actually, in Maine, traffic cameras aren't used a whole lot, just because of the burden of proof to enforce that is beyond what we can do, so.
We have somebody on Zoom.
We need to hear it from John, too.
Go ahead. Just state your name and,
Bruce's iPad, you can speak. You have to unmute yourself.
Hello, hello, I didn't realize I was gonna get through. Are you in,
could
can you hear me?
could you,
Yep. Yes, we can.
please tell us your name?
My name's Bruce. I'm a resident of Kennebunkport, and, my family has property off of Pier Road on Fisher's Lane. And I just was curious about the parking issue, if it could be incorporated long-term in the levy issue, the improvement for the access. Thanks for hearing me. Thanks for the meeting tonight. That's all I have.
That's a good question. I don't think that we can answer that at this time. Anybody else on Zoom?
No.
Okay. Does anybody else have?
No, I mean, to Laurie's point, you know that we got to deal with the issue of the parking during the construction down there. I fully support that. My only concern on on Pier Road up to Stonehaven, as I've said before, and if we can go to one lane, that it alleviates a lot of it. It is a tough area, especially as it gets crowded with traffic going in both directions, pedestrians. There's not good sight there as you're going up that hill, going back towards the town, back towards Cape Porpoise. So I'm concerned about that. I mean, logistically, you know, if we could do this from April to May or April to July, that probably would alleviate it, especially when the traffic gets heavier. I mean, logistically, I just want to know where do you think you would put this light? I mean, if we have people parking there, are these people parked going to be caught between the two lights and they're not going to know which direction the light is? Are they supposed to go off island? If the light's up at Stonehaven and down by the causeway, you got all these 16 cars potentially parked in the middle of it. We got a driveway on the left-hand side. Are they going to know which way should they go? Do they not go?
Yeah, that's a good point, Dave.
And you got snow in the winter. You know, so if we can, no, but I'm just saying if we can move it to spring, then that's fine. But even then, I think you've got to deal with, how are we going to deal with this light? And if we got people and pedestrians parking in between the lights and not know what color the light is.
Yep, no, that's a very good question, and I think we'd have to reach back out to Central Maine Signal to see if, you know, the model, so you're not only facing opposite directions, but, you know, people that are parked may be able to see exactly what pattern that light is in. And I don't know if that's possible. Eric may be able to speak better to that.
I'm not sure, but it's a legit question, whether you can see.
You have to go to the microphone.
That's a legitimate question, to be able to see the backside of the signal, to tell you that you have a green going forward.
Yeah, it depends. I mean, if you're down by the boat ramp, you're not going to know which way the signal is if the other signal is up at Stonehaven. Right? Because you're not going to see it.
No,
You can't see
There'll be two lights.
There'll be two lights.
No, but there would be potentially one behind you.
If you're parked, all I was questioning is whether the one at the top of the hill, whether you could see the actual pattern as well.
Right.
Facing down.
We'd have to go down and see if you're parked there, if you could actually see that light if it was up at Stonehaven versus looking in your rearview mirror to see what the light behind you is.
Right.
Go.
So it may impact the quantity of spaces because you may have to curve back a couple because you need to have the sight or whatever. To the
Yes,
light.
yep. It is a good question, and it may be possible that they have, you know, yet another configuration where you can put a light in the middle too, you know, but we just wanted to bring some potential costs
Yeah.
to you.
Dick?
Up to the mic, Dick.
We have to hear from John.
My first question, I guess, is how many of the parking places, the current parking places at Bickford Island, are going to be displaced by the construction activity? Do we know that?
I mean, one of the issues that the pier is, they're not all marked. And so I would say that, in the dozen to 20 range.
Okay. Because currently there are 16 spaces lined out on Pier Road for the proposed parking during the construction period. And my concern is, and by the way, I totally approve. In fact, I think the only way it can work is with the one-way traffic, alternating one-way traffic. And that should not be as problematic as it was during construction, because this is not in the area of construction, where sometimes they had to modify the amount of time that light was on while they were doing work. Right. This is outside of the work area, so it should be a routine cadence, whatever you come up with. But Dave brings a very good point about how's the guy who's parked in the middle and can't see the light going to know which way which way the traffic is flowing at that time. And with one-way traffic, I would propose that you don't need to modify, or at least significantly modify, the side of the road to allow traffic there. You don't think you need a cut back into the existing contours, because basically you've got that travel lane, and if you can just put in material enough in the current drainage that, that's firm enough under it, and probably a smaller crushed stone or something would be enough that would allow for parking and still leave a wide travel lane that will only be used one direction at a time. So I don't think you need that much construction work to allow for it.
That's only going to be during the summer months.
Well, no, but when they widen it or make it,
He's talking about the work.
I heard discussion about, potentially having to blast ledge and so on and so on. I really don't think that will be necessary if you have a one-way traffic alternating flow. And my greater concern is I would dearly hope that the town does not regard this as a permanent solution to the parking problems of Bickford Island, because it is a dangerous place. There are a lot of pedestrians, summer and winter, and there is a very poor line of sight. If you look at that roadway, if you stand at the causeway, you will only see the first 3 or 4 of the parked cars, and then the others are beyond the turn. And similarly, if you're coming out of Stonehaven, right now, when the vegetation is not mowed back, in a truck it's fine. In a passenger car, you don't see well until you're out into that traffic lane. And with several cars there, your line of sight for pulling onto Pier Road is going to be limited. So I would dearly hope that whatever is put in during construction, and I agree something is needed, that we have a commitment, a firm commitment, that not be a permanent solution, because it isn't.
So I've kind of misunderstood what you're saying.
Okay.
It's not going to be a one-way road all the time for the 9 months. It's going to be in the late spring and summer.
During the period of construction.
Well,
April
no,
through July.
it's going to be, it's going to start November 8th, and that side of the road needs to be cleaned up some, it really does. Because you're still going to have two-way traffic.
So let me just be
I think that's a
clear
mistake.
on my proposal. So my proposal was that from November to the end of March, we have two-way traffic because there is no parking on Stonehaven.
Correct, yeah,
And then in April, we have parking
You don't
on
have parking on
Stonehaven.
Stonehaven anyway.
right, okay.
Well,
We're
Stonehaven
good.
Hill, Stonehaven Hill. I just want to make sure I was clear, because perhaps I wasn't. So
So at
Eric,
any
the-
time that there is parking, there would be one-way alternating traffic, is that correct?
that was my proposal. It's a board decision. But Eric, I didn't know if you had things to share about the width, if you thought even with the lane closed, whether we'd need to do some shoulder work.
I think we can look at the shoulder work. It's just, right now, there's 2 lanes of traffic. We'll occupy one of those lanes, or most of one of those lanes. Whether it's adequate, what's remaining is adequate. We've placed guardrails on the
Yeah.
ocean side, if you will.
Yeah, I think
So-
we would just ask, Eric to, take a look at this again, for safety of people getting in and out of the cars. And then if we go to the one lane and we have parking there when it's one lane traffic, we would want to make sure that we make any cuts needed to the side to get access so people can get in and out of cars in a safe manner, even with a one lane.
I have a question. On the, have we given, I'm concerned about the parked cars knowing what the flow is when you're around that curve. Have we given any consideration to doing this on the causeway? Now, I know with the car doors opening, that would be a problem, but you have that problem when you're parking on a street. You can't fly open your door when you're parked, on Kennebunk Street. So what if we started this up just slightly up the hill as you're coming off of Bickford, go across the causeway, past the ramp until you start the curve. And that way anybody can see the flow of traffic. They got a clear sight on it. They're parked. Now granted, again, you got to be careful when you open your car door. That causeway is only so wide. But it would seem to me that would give you a cleaner dynamic in terms of which way the flow is going.
It's an
Yeah,
alternative.
I think maybe we would ask Eric and Chris to look at that, given this input, and come back to the board with what would be the best suggestion,
That's fine by me.
I mean, because it would also save you guys, it would save the town some money. We don't, right? To some extent, we don't have to blast ledge, and it might work.
And I guess my other question is that I noticed at Bickford Island, one of the parking signs does limit parking to those who hold peer membership. Will these parking spaces be similarly assigned?
I think that the parking will be able to be used by everybody.
Anyone that's trying to access the pier.
Thank you.
John, you have anything else to add?
No, that's it.
Is there anybody else on Zoom that needs any hands raised? Okay,
Oh, there are?
No.
none?
No.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Eric.
So-
Chief?
So,
So is the action to ask Chris and Eric to go back and review, to come back? Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep, go ahead.
So that's a great idea if you
So
could
you
come back.
direct it to the town manager,
Okay,
and the town
So-
manager directs the staff. And I've got it on my list.
okay. Good, thank you.
Done and done,
Great.
Yeah,
ahead of schedule.
okay.
Thank you, guys.
Yeah,
Thanks.
Thank you. Okay, item 9, update from Eric LaBelle regarding progress on the short-term safety goals on Route 9.
So, hi, just give you a quick update. We've provided you a memo back in August about improvements that needed to be made, short-term improvements, so basically the 45-mile-an-hour signs to be moved back to said location. Some additional signage also showing that we were going to have, there was an intersection upcoming, and watch for pedestrians. Actually, I did not verify that. Does anybody know if that went up? But
I didn't
What?
think I saw the watch pedestrians. I
Okay,
saw
I
the
can
speed
talk to
limit
them.
one.
I would say they put up new signs. They didn't move the sign.
They
there-
moved the speed sign.
No, they actually added a different, there's
Oh,
two.
they added a.
They added
yeah,
signs.
a
larger
new one.
ones, I
Yeah.
believe.
Yep.
So-
Yeah, on the other side of the road.
Yeah, and we've done the temporary paving, not paving, painting, stop bars, stop ahead, put in additional stop signs. So all the short-term improvements have been completed as far as I know right now. So from there was the medium improvements and so on and so forth, putting in things that were going to require more capital costs, if you will, crosswalk across the island, things that would need to be programmed in the CIP in the upcoming. The other discussion was the trying to consider basically what do they call it? The type of
Fake
a project. I keep forgetting the term that they utilized, but my apologies. But basically, a trial project, if you will, in the intersection to talk about the feasibility of putting in an island in the future. That's a multi-year process that would require their approval and monitoring, so on and so forth as well.
Do you think we really need that?
I think right now that we've done our first step, we should probably monitor it and see how it goes. This is not something that would happen immediately. It's something that I would need a capital program. I would have to bring that forward in capital.
Well, you'd also have to get approval from the state.
Yep, there's involvement with the state, so we would, because there's monitoring, they want to see pre and post, they want to know what our objectives are, what we want to accomplish by doing so. So it is a state route, they control it. They're willing to work with us, but they don't seem to mind as much if we're the ones spending the money, I guess. Yeah.
Did we get any feedback, Eric, from the state engineer about the potential to move the 45-mile-an-hour sign on the other side, like the entrance coming in, the division between us and Biddeford?
So those were his suggestions. And so when we met, Chris, myself, and the traffic engineer all met together out in the field to discuss these items. So these items were put together with the help of the traffic engineer.
Right. I think as we see more usage of bikes from the budding businesses around there,
Yep.
Hidden Ponds, the campground, more rentals in the condos.
Yep.
We see a lot more foot traffic. And then we do have businesses growing on Route 9 where people are riding their bikes across to go to the Wolf Lobster and riding their bikes to get to the 5-acre farm, et cetera, et cetera. So we see a lot more pedestrians in the high zones, and I just want to make sure the state's aware of that.
Yep.
I understand the line of sight discussion about curves, no curves, but again, I would really like to have the state engineer understand that, this is the dynamics of this area in terms of growth of businesses and in terms of foot traffic, minors, little kids on bikes, and also just this desire for a little bit more safety element, because we're not taking traffic from 55 to 45 and ramping it back up. We're taking traffic on this road, so it's not like we have, tractor trailers going through and we're just trying to slow them down for an intersection, and then, they ramp back up and go on. We take a traffic from 55 to 45 to 35.
Yep.
You get to Cape Porpoise, you're 25.
Yep.
So I still have a problem, given all the pedestrians going on there, and that we're not ramping the traffic back up, the speed railing back up, of why the state would be against us trying to get 45 at the break line between Biddeford and Kennebunkport.
That was really the question for Randy Elian, who's the regional traffic engineer. They have their studies and their methods of calculating what appropriate speeds are there. Yeah.
Is this something that we could ask the state engineer to hear
It
us
would take a
on?
vote of the board.
Okay. Would anybody on the board agree with the motion to have the state engineer either re-talk with Eric or come and talk to us at the board about our concerns?
I don't have moving the speed limit to 45 out further east on Route 9 is not, going westbound, I guess, is not an issue for me. I mean, if the state engineer, I wouldn't have a problem asking them to come and talk or having them talk.
Yes.
But,
Yeah.
I mean, I'd rather do that rather than spend a lot of capital money on something that probably they're not going to approve, or it's going to take forever and it's not going to solve the problem.
So would that be a second
I'll second that for you, Mary.
I have a first and second.
discussion, John?
You're gonna,
Yeah, I'm in favor. I'd like to see the 45 start basically at the Biddeford line.
okay. So I have a
That
first and
protects-
second. Is there any more discussion? No. Hearing none. All in favor? John?
Aye.
Okay, motion passes.
Thank you.
Thanks, Eric. Thanks
Thank-
for the short-term
Thanks,
stuff.
Eric.
Thank you.
Greatly appreciated.
Okay, other business. Dave?
I have no other business tonight, Alan.
Yes, I'd just like to update everyone that we had, last Thursday, we had the town hall meeting. The committee came with the consultants to update the process of what the town hall committee's been doing. It's been videoed, it's on, people can access this on the town website. We had nice participation back from town residents. We got some input, and now the town hall committee will be meeting again next month to review what we heard from residents about the two options that were presented, and then take that forward to the select board, a recommendation to the select board.
When's that gonna be?
I guess once we decide at the next meeting.
At the next meeting?
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay.
I have nothing.
Nothing here.
So I have a couple things. One is I've asked Yanina Nicholas if she'll just walk the public again through how to sign up for e-notifications and find agendas and minutes on the webpage, because we've had some questions lately from people who seem challenged by that.
So I will have to do it from this spot because the mouse is wired, but you can look at the screen. So we received a lot of good feedback, positive feedback about new website, and I think a lot of residents are pleased about the way it looks and the way the things are laid out, and they can find things easily. But there is still a lot of questions about receiving notifications. So first step that we did is this alert, as you can see at the bottom of the screen on the right side. It says, don't forget to sign up to receive e-notifications. So my team made sure to put two links, because you have to sign up 2 times on 2 separate pages for notifications on the website. One is general notifications. You can choose pages. So this is the top one, registration page. So sign up for e-notifications on the registration page. And I just want to mention that anyone anytime looks at our website will see this e-alert. It pops up automatically. You will always see it. So once you click on the top link, it will bring you to the page that says e-notify. So it gives you directions, how to sign up for this. So type your email address in the box where it says email address. Then if you want to receive text messages, then you will have to enter your cell phone number. And also, to subscribe or unsubscribe, click email icon and or SMS type icon. So once you type your email address, I can try my email address. Thank you. No. So, Kennebunkport, ME. That's my general address. I can click sign in, and then it prompts me to put my phone number, so I'll put my office number. 76716. Sorry, it's not easy to do it from this spot. Okay, and I click save, and then I can choose, well, I'm already subscribed, so it already shows that I'm subscribed, but you can choose if you want to be subscribed by email or by text. So this
you also can, on this page, you can choose what other pages you will subscribe. So there, it says under page links, it says town manager's page, or finance, or fire, public health, town clerk. So you can choose different pages that you can subscribe to. And then, does anyone have questions about this general page, e-notification? Okay. So at the end, do we have to save it? Because I heard one person didn't save it at
You
the
can
end.
save changes. So mine shows save changes. It's because I'm already subscribed, as I said, so it will just prompt
But you
saving
should
my
go
changes.
down to the
But if you,
back
yes,
bottom
if you
and-
go all the way down, click save changes or cancel changes, whichever will be. So this subscription here will help you receive notifications from the general page on our website, mainly this what's happening parts here. And my staff sends it both as the e-notifications and as message notifications. The other part that a lot of residents,
So going back, once you sign up, you will get an email to confirm your email address. And you will need to confirm that email address for it to take effect, correct?
You have, yes.
I believe you will receive email address.
And you confirm it.
Yes,
Yeah,
it was.
You have to confirm it, otherwise you remain in the pending file.
It's been like 3-4 months since I subscribed for this.
Yeah, no, it'll send you an email, and you kind of have to, it's certifying that that is your email. So you have to kind of respond to the email, and that kind of does it. You have to opt in to the email.
So also on this part of the website, if anyone has difficulties, we can check if people subscribed via email, if they subscribed with text notifications. You can reach out to me, Dave, or Hope, and you all saw my email address there, and we can check if you actually subscribed to this page. So a few people reached out, and Dave sent out to them very detailed email list showing how you do step by step and what you do step by step to subscribe to this part and the second part of the website. So the second part of the website that you need to subscribe is called, so I put it as a second line, sign up for agendas and minutes on the documents on demand, which is an add-on to our website where we put agendas, minutes, and extra documents that pertain to committees. And as I mentioned before, we have this add-on to the website, because if website will go at some point or we change vendors, this will stay. And this has a lot of data and information that we use. So for this part, you will have to go to login part. As you can see, it's at the top right corner. And you will have to, again, put your email address. Oh, nope, sorry, you will have to.
Actually, I think that's for the admin.
Yes, it is for the admin, sorry.
It's not there.
It's email notifications.
No.
Email notifications. There it is.
Excuse me, you will have to go to email notifications, which you will see at the ribbon at the top. So next to Document Center, email notification, contact us. So you will go to email notification part, and then you will have to click sign up part, which is at the very bottom. You will see it was the question mark. So this will bring you to the page where you will have to put email address, your password, confirm password, first name, last name. Here you go.
And so this is to get specific agendas and meeting notices
Right.
for
If
the
you want
various
agendas,
committees.
minutes, then it sends you a different email to tell you that a new agenda or new minutes have been posted in whichever you click, whichever committees you want to follow.
So these are just notifications. It doesn't send you the agenda.
It
or
sends you a link.
It sends you a link. Okay.
So because my email address was already subscribed, and I subscribed both from my Kennebunkport and my personal, I don't have a third option for this, but it will bring you to a new page, and you will see a folder, a little folder on that page, and it will say Town of Kennebunkport. You will have to click to open that folder, and once you open it, you will see all the options all of these committees under this Town of Kennebunkport folder. So it will look basic, the next page will look like this, Town of Kennebunkport, and once you click to open it, you can choose which committees you want to subscribe to. So you can subscribe to one, or you can subscribe to all of them. As you can see, there is quite a lot of folders. Because every time we upload something into those folders, we click send e-notifications, and people receive notifications through those folders. And you will have to save changes, and you will have to, if you will decide to unsubscribe, you go back through the same process, and you will just have to unclick the folder. So it's, I think it's quite simple, but people omit this part of selecting the folder. On this part of the website, we cannot check who subscribed or who didn't. So we don't know who subscribed through this or who did not. If you think you did, reach out to my team again, and we will help you resubscribe or find other ways. But we don't have the ability to check this part.
So can you show the front page and just the calendar and minutes and agendas?
So the front page of Town of Kennebunkport?
Yep.
So if you type Town of Kennebunkport, it will bring you to this top page here. There are mega buttons at the lower. You will see again, register for e-notifications. We put it in multiple spots. Then you will see what's happening, which is our news and alerts. And then if you scroll lower, there are upcoming events. So anytime for the Board of Selectmen, I'm responsible for putting those packets and agendas on the website. I put it on the agendas and minutes on the document on demand. I send e-notification, but I also make sure to put it on this calendar. And you see this calendar has two tabs, meetings and events. It's defaulted to meetings, so you can see what meetings are happening when. If you, so today, for example, September 26th, this is a larger increased version of the smaller buttons on calendar. Once you click on this, you will also be able to see the agenda and Zoom link through which you can connect. So you can connect to this Zoom link through documents on demand that I just showed you, or through this calendar button. So also,
Yeah, Nina, is this done, like, is it done a month at a time? So like say, okay.
No, so as you receive packets on Monday, meeting is on Thursday, right? So let's look at the calendar.
So the calendar dates are done, yes. So it would show these are the normal times planning board's going to meet. These are the normal times selectmen, growth planning committee. The agendas, though, that piece gets uploaded when the agenda's set.
Yeah, so what I was trying to get to.
Which is usually a few days before.
Yeah, so agenda added
So see
with
how on
links.
September 26th, it says, click for agenda, but then planning board on October 2nd has not an agenda assigned to it yet.
Got it.
So the planning board, so they have Zoom meeting, but I would check just a few days right before the meeting. This is just for, it's definitely there the day off. So when somebody tries quickly to get on the Zoom, this is the quick way to do it. But agenda's uploaded on Monday, and if Monday is a holiday, then Tuesday, week off.
If you go up further too, can you show them there's another place to get minutes and agendas? Up near the top.
The blue.
See agendas.
Right there.
So on the mega buttons menu, you will see online bill payments, minutes and agendas, which will bring you again back to documents on demand. So this was, we have quite a lot of buttons, and we try to prioritize them by demand. So minutes and agendas were you had to scroll a little bit, but there was a high demand, so we put them second on that mega menu. But you'll see them right there. So it's again another way.
So on minutes and agendas, I would just go, that folder comes up, and then I would just hit the Board of Select
Yeah, so if
bucket,
you.
and then it would have given me what I needed for tonight.
Yeah, and so basically you click on minutes and agendas, it will bring you to document on demand. You don't have to be subscribed to it to see it. So nobody logged in right now from this computer, so then you will click on Board of Selectmen. You can choose agendas, minutes, packets, videos. So you agendas 2024, all right here. You can choose, let's say, packets. It's a little heavier folder, so. And let's say tonight's packet, we're gonna open up. And there is a Zoom link there as well, so it's another way to get to your Zoom link, but also whenever I make an agenda, I link it to the appropriate item, just how I do for the board. So anyone will be able to see the full packet, and you just scroll through the packet. Again, you don't need to be subscribed to see this.
Thank you. Great.
Thank you, Yanina.
Just a quick question,
thank you.
Yanina, when we get the text messages, it might be an email, I'm sorry, it's one of them, I was trying to find it on my phone. Who does it come from? It doesn't come from the town of Kennebunkport.
It comes from Revise.
Revise.
Yes,
And is there any way of getting that?
we've put in a request.
Okay, only because other companies are using Revise, like, Tufts Medical uses Revise, so you get all these Revise things, and you never know who it's actually from.
Yeah, so we did put a ticket for it few weeks ago. We're waiting on response because they need to do something on there. And this is a brand new website, so they're still going through bugs, and it's one of those, but we're working on that. Yeah.
Thank you.
You have something, right?
I do. I have one more thing. And so the town did go through the bond sale process. On the village parcel, we had broken it between the public land, which was non-taxable, and the land that would be taxable because we're not sure if it's going to be for private or public use. Originally, we had that for a 5-year bond with a balloon payment due this year. We have refinanced that for another 15 years. We went through the bond rating. It was the first time Nicole, our new finance director, went through that. I think she did a great job, used Moores and Cabot as we have in the past. The town was very fortunate to maintain its financial rating, which is the highest on the Standard & Poor's scale and second highest on the Moody's, and that's just because of our size. Moody's will never rate us higher. And so we did budget for a 4.5% taxable interest rate. We were able to sell our bond at 4.19. So we were pleased with that.
What was the original bond at?
The original bond was under 3
Okay.
because it was a 5-year.
No, but 4.19 is great.
Do you have anything else? No? Okay. Approve the September 26, 2024 treasurer warrant.
So moved.
Second.
First and second. All in favor? John?
Aye.
4-0. Thank you. And your most favorite?
Motion to adjourn.
Second.
I have a first and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
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 4-0.
Aye.
Thank you very much, and have a good night, everybody.
Night all.